In this video, we will show you how to replace your outside door mirror on this Dodge Ram. This will be mounted directly to your door. Let's get into it. Onto the hood, we're going to make our way over to the negative battery terminal. Use an 11mm to loosen this nut just enough that you can remove the terminal from the battery itself. Set that aside so it's making no contact. Let's get started removing the inside door panel. To do that, we'll make our way right up inside here. You'll find that you have two Phillips head screws. Remove the pair. Take hold of that grab handle, give it a little wiggle, and we're going to lift it up and out of here. There should be a couple little tabs coming across the front that hold it in place. Now we can move down to our inside door handle. For this, you'll find that you have a 10mm headed bolt. In some cases, it might even be a Phillips head. Once you have that nice and loose, you can remove the bolt with the handle at the same time. Now we can make our way to that window crank handle. To remove the crank handle from this area, you'll find that in between this plastic washer area and the crank handle, there's a small metal clip. We'll be using an angled pick to remove that clip. Just make our way in here. Pop this out of place. There's our clip. Now we can remove the crank handle. At this point, we'll just have a look at the backside here. We can remove these two pieces. With that out of the way, we'll continue on to our one Phillips head screw up in this corner. At this point, we'll continue on with a trim tool. We're going to start getting in between the door panel and the door itself and gently separate it. There we are. Now up near the mirror switch, we have to make sure that we disconnect that wiring harness. We'll grab onto this electrical connector. Right where my index finger is, there's a small squeeze tab. Go ahead and squeeze that in and disconnect that. We'll give it a quick inspection and we can set this aside. With the door panel out of the way, we have a clear view of our mirror wiring harness. We'll squeeze on this little piece here, disconnect the electrical connectors, and take a peek for funny colors. This looks fine. We'll set it aside. Move along up here. Remove your insulator. Set that aside. Now let's have a look in this area. That's where you'll find your three pieces of mounting hardware. In this case, we'll be using a 10mm to release each one of these. For the last one, you want to make sure you're holding onto that mirror so it does not fall and potentially hurt you. Let's give the mirror a little wiggle and start pulling it through. Keep in mind you do have this wiring harness and it needs to be pressed through the door as well. There it is, friends. Let's clean the door where the brand new mirror will sit. All right, let's get ready for our installation of our brand new tow mirror. We'll take that wiring and put it through the center hole here, and then align each of our three studs with their corresponding holes as we put this in place. Grab onto this rubber grommet, give it a little tug to pull it into place. There we are. Now we can take up the slack on that wiring while we put each of those studs into their place. Now we can get our bracket on here. Slide the wiring through that center hole. This would be a lot easier if I could hold the mirror with the third hand. Now that we have the bracket in place, let's continue on with our 3 mounting nuts. You want to make sure you are using the ones with the extended washers. Now we can snug these up and torque them to 60 inch-pounds. Now we can connect in our wiring harness. Just give that a little wiggle. On this particular mirror, you'll find that it comes with extra wiring, and this is so you can connect it to either a directional or to your running lights. At this point, let's continue on to preparing to putting in the extension wire. Now to do this, we're going to remove the speaker, disconnect it, and set this aside so we can carefully reach inside and bring our wiring through here, and then through this rubber area, making its way into the passenger compartment of the vehicle. We'll use a Phillips head to remove each of these mounting screws. On here, we'll just grab onto that little lock, lift it up and away, disconnect it. Quick check for corrosion, and we can set this aside. With the speaker out of the way, have a look inside this area. What we're looking for is where the wires go through the door. You can see that they make their way all the way through this rubber channel into the passenger compartment. Let's pause inside that door and we'll make our way inside of this kick panel. We're going to have to remove it. Now, typically for this, you can just go ahead and slide it right out once you've removed the lower panel coming across here. On ours, it's extremely rotted. It's impossible to remove this screw. So I'll just go ahead and lift this up and we can kind of set that aside. Now we'll take hold of this and pull it out of place. Now it's time to take hold of our wiring. You'll find that one of the sets of wires has a sticker on it and it says length 5 meters. This is the longer set of wirings which we will need for the passenger side. We'll use the shorter set for the driver's side. Now the next thing that we'll need to do is take hold of the end of the wires, the one without the electrical connector, and we'll take it and put it next to a metal rod. You could use a coat hanger if you needed to. Essentially, we're just going to put this right on here and tape it nice and tight. Once we've done that, we'll be coming through the door and bring it up and through the rubber tube into the passenger compartment. Don't need to put too much tape on this because we will have to take it off from underneath the dash. Make sure we leave a little tab here that we can easily grab onto. Now I'll take this and slide it right on through. As I'm bringing this through, I'll be flexing it as needed. Now, once we have this pressed all the way in so we can see it inside the passenger compartment, we're going to remove the tape, remove the rod while leaving the wires in place. Now let's pause right here and we'll connect in the other side of the wiring to where the mirror is. Get this connected in. Listen for a click from that. Give it a tug. Now at this point, we'll continue back inside the passenger compartment and we'll pull all of our slack into the passenger compartment. To keep the wires together, I just tied a loose knot. Let's take the wiring and bring it behind the emergency brake lever mechanism. We want it to come out through the backside, so we're sure it's not going to get caught. Go ahead and pull up that slack. Use a 10mm for this. Now we'll be paying attention to the wiring that leads to this. What we will be looking for is these two wires right here. You'll have a wire that's green with a red tracer. You'll also have a wire that's brown with a red tracer. The wire that we will be using for the driver's side directional is the green with the red tracer, right here. That will be the one that we will tap into with the power wire, which is the red wire that we just fed through that little wiring harness. Now for this, you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of slack for this. We don't want to cut it too short, that's going to cause an issue. But we definitely don't need to have it with 6 feet hanging off the end. Let's quickly talk about the wire tap. On one side of this, you'll find that you have 2 holes. And if you were to spin it around, you'll find that you have a hole that goes all the way through, and the other one pretty much just ends very shortly. The area that goes all the way through is for the green wire with the red tracer. The one that goes through but then stops is for our red wire with the white tracer. Let's start by sliding this into place over the green wire. Be a little bit difficult to get some slack on this, to get your fingers in there. Should just slide right through. Make sure you have that centered. Continue on with that red wire. Slide it down in as far as you can. Now at this point, we'll continue with some pliers. We're going to squeeze this area in. Confirm that that red wire is properly in place before you continue. I'll squeeze this in. Let's make sure that this is perfectly level. And now we'll slide the lock over it. Perfect. Now, if you were to look approximately where your hood release is, you'll find that you have a plastic panel, and that plastic panel is held in place with 3 Phillips head screws. Let's remove them. Let's take hold of that panel and give it a little tug straight rearward. Remove that from the vehicle. Let's make our way to this Phillips head screw. This is where we will be making our ground. If yours looks like ours, you can tell it's completely rusted. We want to have a good ground here, so I'll just use some sandpaper and sand it down. We're looking for bare metal. Now we can continue with that ground wire. You want to make sure you have plenty of slack in this area because we want the ground wire to come up along this area all the way up behind the dash and then make its way to right here. It's easier to cut a little bit off than it is to add some. Let's kind of put it up in there, give ourselves a little extra. It's going to come down to here. And now I'm going to trim this. For this wire, we want to make sure that we have exposed wire coming out of it. So essentially just removing that sheathing. Go ahead and give that wire a quick twist at the end here. Make sure all those little strands are stuck together. The next thing that we would want to do would be to add in one of these little connectors here. You would just slide this right on through the center and crimp it in. After that, you'd put the mounting bolt through there to hold it in place, making a good ground. But before we do so, let's make our way over to the other side of the vehicle and do the exact same thing with the door. Remove the panel, remove the mirror, install that mirror, bring the wiring all the way through the vehicle over to here. Once we've done that, we'll take that ground wire, put it in with this one, and connect them all together. Let's grab that slack. Let's pull this right on through until it's nice and taut. There we are. Now what we'll do is we'll just bring this all the way over to where we're going to connect it and then give it a quick trim. That's going to give us plenty of slack here. Just going to remove all this. As far as that black wire, we'll just trim off the end here. Give that a quick twist. Let's continue on with connecting these two. Now this red wire, once again, is the power wire. For this one in particular, we will be looking for the brown wire with a red tracer. It should be right next to that green wire with the red tracer. Double check to confirm that is the proper one. Now we can trim off this end here. Now we can continue on with that red connector. You remember you have the hole that goes all the way through, and then you have a second hole which goes 3/4 of the way through and then abruptly stops. Let's take this and put it in place on that brown wire with the red tracer. Okay, that brown wire is properly in place. We'll continue on with our power wire now. Just bring this up and out of the way. Press that down in there as far as it can go. We'll hold it in that place. Use our pliers to crimp this so it's flush. Double check, lock it in. Let's take care of that ground wire. Take each of those two ground wires and twist those together. Now we can put on our wire connector. We'll slide this through. I want to have a little bit of the wire sticking out at the end here. Now it's time to crimp this in place. When you crimp this in place, you want to crimp the area closest to this metal area, not down where my fingers are. Give that a tug to make sure both of those wires are secured properly. Let's put in our Phillips head screw to ground this out properly. Double check to make sure that's nice and tight. Now we can reattach this. We'll put it in place and tighten that 10mm headed bolt. Now that we've run all of our wiring, let's make sure that we tie up the slack so it's not falling down anywhere where it might get caught or damaged in any way. For this, you can use some electrical tape, possibly some wire ties. It's your prerogative. That's tucked away behind there. No way of getting caught on anything. Now we'll do the same exact thing to the passenger side wiring. As it comes across, we'll be wire tying it up so it's not hanging down in any way. Pull Tuck all this wiring in. We are going to have that plate coming across this area. That will protect everything. Now, before we go any further, let's continue on by temporarily reconnecting the driver's side door panel, and we'll just hang it in this area. Let's make our way under the hood and reconnect that negative battery terminal. Let's get this right on here. We'll use an 11mm, make sure it's nice and tight. Make your way back in the passenger compartment, put the key in the on position, and test the mirror functionality. That's perfect. Let's try a directional. All right. Let's continue. Let's put on that lower steering column cover. You'll find that you have a couple holes on this, and on the cover itself, you have a couple little tabs that we'll need to press into them. Now, once we have those lined up, we'll press it into position, and then put in all 3 of our mounting screws. Now we can put in our side kick panel. For this, you want to make sure you have this lifted up and the carpeting pressed down. Slide that in. Double check to make sure the carpet is underneath this area. Now we'll bring this down into the proper position. At this point, you would want to put in your mounting screws. As I had mentioned before, ours are rusted, rotted, and non-functional. Now we can remove that panel, reinstall your speaker, Now we can get ready to install that door panel. Let's press this into position. Listen for a click from that. Now we can bring this up nice and high. We'll be paying attention to our door lock knob. You want to make sure you slide it through the door panel. Now, as we continue down at an angle, we'll be paying attention to where the window crank handle will go. Make sure that's aligned properly, and you can start pressing this into the proper position. With that in place, let's put in our upper mounting screw. Let's install that grab handle. We have our 2 Phillips head screws. All right, let's get ready for the installation of our door handle. You'll find that we have a Phillips head bolt on this. We'll take this, get it aligned in the proper position, and tighten it up. Right there's where it's bottomed out. Just make sure it's nice and snug. The next thing you want to do is just make sure you test its functionality. Let's install that window crank handle. For this, you want to make sure that you have the plastic buffer facing in the proper direction, so the concave area is facing towards the crank handle. Now we can take this, we'll slide it on here, and then press this into position. Okay friends, we tested its functionality before we put the door back together. test its functionality one last time. Thanks for watching.